Hey guys, welcome back. This is Unearthed Evidence. I'm Jed,
And I'm Gina.
and we're kind of like another uh, group that wants to help solve crimes. And actually, today we're going to talk to Gina about a family member.
Yeah.
She's had some heartbreak in her life where there's been an unsolved murder, and we want to talk to Gina about what happened with her aunt. Now, this is your aunt, correct?
Correct. This is
Okay.
my Gracie.
Uh-huh.
Her name was Gracia, Tovar, and so but we called her Tia Gracie. This is my aunt. Yeah. So
Okay.
this episode is dedicated to my aunt.
And hopefully this will help give some closure to family members and you as well. We're still going to do our due diligence and do the
Yeah.
FOIA and see what we can come up with, cuz there's not much, cuz
Right.
she passed away in the 80s, right?
That's correct. So I'll tell you a little bit about what I have because I know we don't have a whole lot of case. So my aunt, I believe I was 12 when my aunt died, and it was horrific. She was stabbed, I believe it was 49 times. Her
My.
throat was slit. She had rings on her fingers. They had almost, taken some of her fingers off. They did. I don't think they took them off, but they were trying. It was clear that
Mhm.
they were trying to get the rings off. There was so much blood in the apartment and stuff. It was unbelievable.
And this happened in her own apartment?
That's correct. And she is from Los Angeles. Her apartment complex at that time was directly across the street from the Temple Street police station. And
Wow.
so growing up, I remember being a young girl and being outside my house and hearing my mother scream. And it was so loud that, I remember going, and I just heard this horrific long scream. And then she said, "Okay, come on, get packed. We got to go to LA. We got to go to LA." And I said, "What are we doing? What are we doing?" And she couldn't even speak. That's
Oh
how
man.
upset she was. And so, in between kind of hyperventilating, she said, "Auntie Gracie's dead. Auntie Gracie's dead." So she packed me up. I don't think my brother went. She packed me up, and we went to LA. And so I wasn't allowed to go in the apartment, which I'm glad because growing up, I think I was 5 when I had my first psychic that I recall, but my
Mhm.
I was having experiences much earlier. Then I was so sensitive. But growing up, my mother, she had went to the apartment, and she's seen the apartment. She actually had to go in there and do some of the cleaning because
Oh my gosh.
they didn't have at that time. They didn't have these hazmat people that came out. So it was, I believe it was my aunt, Loopy, my mother, and it was horrific. And we were living up north at the time, so we had to catch a plane and go to LA. Because my grandparents lived in central, South Central, and then my aunt, of course. And so this was it was just unbelievable. Being that young and knowing what had happened and seeing everybody just, and I remember getting bits and pieces of what had happened, her being murdered, and what we found out after we buried her. Her boyfriend was at the funeral, and there were a little bit of whispers here and there, but there was no kind of conclusion. And then it was, I don't recall because I was very young how long after, but her boyfriend had committed suicide. He had like an overdose, and before he had overdosed, he had told his family that in fact he had had my aunt murdered. And so
Oh my gosh.
some years had passed, and one of the things, and I don't believe that he was by himself, but I never thought about that as a young girl. But I did feel, being a medium, that my aunt was definitely guiding me in a lot of things in life. She was an avid runner. She was into martial arts. By the time I hit 20, I was running 5 miles a day after I had my son, and I was in, jujitsu, judo, stick fighting. I was doing it all. And I remember thinking, gosh, I wonder whatever happened to my aunt. I always felt her presence, but I wondered whatever happened to her. So when we started this podcast, I said, I want to find out what happened to my aunt. I have a gift. Why haven't I used it?
Yeah.
So with this opportunity, I can share with you what happened, and then we can take some questions. Um,
Yes.
I asked my aunt in spirit. I said, Auntie, what happened? And a boyfriend felt like there was, felt like the walls were closing in on him after the fact. He felt like everything, felt like somebody had turned on him. He was very paranoid at that time. There was the motive. The main motive is, my aunt, or she's Mexican and Apache. Chiricahuas. We come from the Geronimo tribe. There was no surrender. My aunt was definitely a fighter.
Yeah.
There was rumors or thoughts of cheating, is what she told me. I don't know if he thought she was cheating on her, or she thought she was cheating on him, but there was cheating. And so they were fighting. It was a very unhealthy relationship, and the power dynamic. My aunt was, like I said, she was a fighter. And it did get abusive, and I think they had broken up, or there was talks of breaking up. So I wasn't clear with who cheated on who. Okay, I wasn't clear on that, but I definitely believe the motive was a breakup and cheating. Okay. And boyfriend was very jealous. It was jealous of her, was jealous of the kids. My aunt, was lighter skin. She, like I said, she was very outgoing. Everybody loved my aunt that knew her. I mean, she was very, very, very talkative. She was very warm and friendly. She she was an Aquarian, so she had a lot of social gatherings at her house. So she was very popular that way. Boyfriend, like I said, he was jealous of her and her children. Boyfriend was angry, and I seen him, and what she showed me was after their fight, or their talks of breaking up, and she was screaming at him. She was kicked him out of her house. He was in, I saw a dark room where he was talking to a few guys. There was about 3 or 4 there. And he was, talking about, he was angry, talking to a group. He feels like he wasted his money and time on her. And they were like, you shouldn't let her get away with this. So there was some sort of, group mob, mentality.
I want to ask you a question real quick, and I don't mean to interrupt, but did he
Yeah.
have some kind of ties to either mobsters or cartel or anything?
He was, they say, I found out, well, it was talk when I was young that he was a drug dealer. So whatever that meant back in
Okay.
that time, he was definitely into that. The group decided drugs. So they were in a drug, I picked up that they were in a drug induced haze as well. So this was kind of like somebody venting to a bunch of friends. Oh, you can't let her get away with that. Or maybe associates. These could have been associates. You can't let her get away with that. And they had decided that she needed to die. And that's kind of how that came along.
Wow.
Now, my aunt did feel like something was going to happen to her. Like
Mhm.
she knew. And that day, in fact, she had told my cousin,
Mhm.
her son, Richard, don't go to the beach. So don't leave. Something's going to happen today. And he had made plans to go to the beach.
Mhm.
And she told him, don't go because I have a bad feeling. And so she felt like something was going to happen. And
Mhm.
the minute she left to go get her laundry from the dry cleaners, he left and he went to the beach. He was a teenager. That's what
That's what
teenage
they
boys
do.
do. And knowing what happened to her, maybe that was a saving grace. But yeah, he never recovered from that. I
Right.
believe, if I'm not mistaken, he walked in and found my aunt.
Oh, geez.
Yeah.
At
So
what age? How old was he?
okay, so when this happened, my cousin Tina was 13. She was older than I am. So I was 12, 13, 14, 15. So she was about 15. So he would
Oh,
have been 16 or 17
man.
when this happened, when walking in and finding. And it was, my mother said the apartment was horrible. And we'll go into the details of that. So what the cops had surmised, and what I picked up from my aunt kind of was the same, was this was also an element of surprise. My aunt was doing laundry, I guess, in the laundry room, and she came back and she was carrying in her laundry when she was attacked. Now, what I meant, like what I felt like with my aunt, she was a fighter. Nobody wanted to go toe to toe with her directly one on one. So I do believe there was at least two people in that apartment. I do believe it was her boyfriend, and I do believe it was somebody else. Um, so one, like I said, one on one could not attack her, so they had to catch her off guard. They planned this. This was a plan based in a drug induced haze of anger and cheating and all that kind of thing. So they planned this. So she knew who killed her. She knew it wasn't necessarily the boyfriend that killed her. He brought somebody there to do that. But she
Yeah.
knew. Okay. Because he couldn't do it. He couldn't carry it out. There was let's see, an alcohol drug induced psychosis. That's what I picked up. It was one killer day, the day before, unsure where. Okay, so the day that this happened, or what I picked up, and I'm reading my notes from when I was channeling my aunt, was this man was paid. The element of surprise, like I said, she was stabbed 41 times. One of the first stabs went through the heart. So when it went through the heart, when they pulled it out, it was spraying. And she was fighting, and everything went everywhere. There was clothes, there was laundry detergent at that time, detergent everywhere. The phone, I remember my mom saying that they found her with the phone in her hand. I think she was using the phone to fight. She was looking for a weapon. But after this happened, there was money given to this male. I do see a male, darker hair, darker curly hair, medium skin, darker than me. I do feel that he was kind of stocky. I don't feel that he was a muscular guy. Is kind of what I get from this gentleman. The money that was given to him, he gave it either to a wife or a mother figure, and then he left, like right after he left. And he was haunted. He was haunted. And knowing my aunt the way that I knew her.
I was just going to ask, was she doing it?
Oh,
100%.
yes. Oh, yes. There's no way in hell she was going to let this go unnoticed. So
That's
he
like
was
kind of the
definitely,
best revenge you could
she
possibly
haunted
get.
him. What she shared with me,
Good.
and I'm feeling like he went to New York. That was the one. I'm feeling like this gentleman went to New York, so he could have been Puerto Rican.
Okay.
He went to New York. I believe he was attacked and murdered.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if he was stabbed, but he was attacked and he was murdered. Okay, and he was haunted. What they did, I don't doubt, and I believe that was what caused her boyfriend to overdose. Was that
Mm-hmm.
I believe she haunted him till, but they couldn't get away with this. Yeah, dark curly hair, New York, haunted. Yeah, she didn't, and so that was what had happened. And I asked her, and she was just like, she answered my questions, and then it was like, no more. It's done.
So, do you think maybe she was done because it was a little too much for you? Because I know this has been a very up and down roller coaster for you for a very long time. And even, now you're emotional, and it's definitely something that has haunted your family in a
Yeah.
way,
Well, the
you know.
talk was initially was like, oh, she was murdered because she knew too much. And I
Mhm.
thought, my aunt was like, she wasn't one to be opening her mouth. She would fight with you, but
But
if you
she's
left her
not
alone,
gonna snitch.
she's
She's
not going
not
to
a snitch.
like that. No,
Yeah.
absolutely not. This breakup or this was because of jealousy. This man was a cuckoo for coconuts. He was on drugs. They were drinking. My aunt was a drinker, but there was a psychosis, and it involved cheating. And I don't know who cheated. Maybe they both cheated. Maybe they caught each other, or one caught one. And
Yeah.
that she had cussed him out, and there had been a big fight.
Mhm.
That's what I'm picking up. Yeah.
it amazes me how much stuff you every show we've ever done, you amaze me with everything, because you have time and time again come through and proven yourself that you really do know what you're talking about. You really do have a gift. And I want all the listeners to know, this is huge. And a lot of people may not believe in the paranormal, believe in psychic mediums, but I'm telling you right now, there's stuff that she could have never known being the age that she was. And just the fact that, you took on that. I don't know, that to me that would be stressful to take on, just even talking to a dead relative, a relative that has passed, to find out what happened to them after such a traumatic incident in the first place. I mean, obviously, it was someone who knew her, because we see time and time again in law enforcement that the most heinous, nasty, I mean, she was stabbed 40 some odd times.
29.
Usually that is called a crime of passion, because somebody was really, really pissed off or really, really upset at that moment. And it turns into an uncontrollable anger that keeps you from stopping. So I agree that it would have been two people. I wholeheartedly believe you when
I
you
think she
say,
was fighting and one was trying to get her down.
yeah, but I think he came in, his hands are not clean,
No,
by any means.
no.
I think he also went in, and after she was knocked down, he then was so mad and came in and just, stabbed her all those times. I'm sure she got shanked once or twice by this other guy, but I really believe that most of those are from the
Who?
boyfriend. And
Probably.
it's just um that's just how it is in, like, the what we see time and time again in law enforcement with people who break up, and one person is involved in a gang, in a cartel, in a mob, or whatever. Somebody either is going to die or they're going to roll, and to keep them from rolling, you got to kill them. Unfortunately, it sounds like that's exactly what happened here.
Yeah.
She maybe did know too much, but whether she was going to tell or not, they don't care. They
Yeah.
always assume that you're going to tell. Just like how, cops, corrections officers, we assume everyone is lying to us.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, so he probably just assumed she was going to snitch, and nothing's worse than a snitch. So guess what? To keep it
I wish we
quiet.
had like the DNA that we have now, because
Mhm.
what they I do remember is that the police had said they found the knife on the bathroom,
Did they
the
have any prints?
they didn't have any prints because there was so much blood, but they had rinsed off the knife, and that you could see where my mom told me that the cops told her you could see where they had tried to clean up
Yeah.
themselves
Yeah.
because there was so much blood. But if we had had DNA, because isn't it true that if you use a knife, sometimes it slides if it's real wet and then it can
Yeah.
cut you? So
Yeah.
we could have gotten some sort of profile, but I'm convinced that, my aunt took care of both of these two.
Yeah. And
And then
maybe she did.
found, yeah, we found out after that they thought he was, they knew he had something to do with it. They didn't know if he
Mhm.
was there or not, but I
Mhm.
do believe he was there. But at that time they had punched time cards,
Mhm.
so he wasn't working too far. He could have gone there and done that, and they said, oh no, he was at work, we have him punched in, but we believe somebody else punched him in, like,
And
somebody
and
else.
how hard is it to go punch in, put your time card in the slot, and leave? I mean,
Yeah.
come on. That was why they got rid of the time clocks and went
Yeah.
electronic, because people were doing that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I mean, it wasn't just the only reason why, but it was one of. But, the thing is with DNA collection and evidence collection, there's DNA everywhere. there's DNA in your hair. You
Yeah.
have a hair follicle and it's mitochondrial DNA, but you can still get a match. If he did harm himself, there's still a way to pull a DNA profile. It's not easy, but it also depends on, they didn't do DNA like they do now. However, if they collected it and if they still have it, it should automatically, from what I understand, they automatically run the cold cases through any new profiling system, any new DNA evidence that they get. It should have already been, if they had evidence, it should have been collected and run through.
But
Now,
how many years would they have been doing that? That would be my question.
well,
Like,
there's
does
people
this?
that from 20, 30 years ago who have been in prison that get released from DNA evidence from that long ago. So because back 20, 30 years ago, they did not have the DNA stuff, now they do. They take the evidence that they do have, and the only thing that they could do back then was like, blood type profile
Yeah,
is pretty
yeah,
much it. And if it was a match,
yeah,
that's how they kinda honed in on a suspect. But, DNA is so precise nowadays that, they can tell you what percentage of what ethnicity you are and where you got it from, you know?
yeah,
So
yeah,
they generally try to, as far as I am aware, they send it through a DNA
yeah.
analysis
Mhm.
no matter how long it's been. Now, yes, DNA does degrade over time, but that doesn't mean that the important stuff still isn't in there. They can
Yeah.
still get a match, they can still get a profile. So,
Well,
if we're talking 40 years ago, which I
yeah,
think that's when the 80s, God, 40 years. If
yeah.
we're talking 40 years ago,
30 something years because I'm 55. So,
oh my
and I was, I think, 12.
yeah,
Yeah, I was about
I'm
12.
every day these cases remind me of my own mortality. But, I it's like, yeah, I was walking down the street, boom, and next thing I know, I'm up in heaven talking to, Saint Peter at the gates, and it's just like, "Yeah, that could happen to me too," you know? I could
And
get bit by a
it,
coyote out here that I'm
when
trying to
it when
pet.
it first happened, my mom was like, "I can't believe it. She was across the street from a police station,
Yeah.
street, and
Yeah,
it's happened."
and that's the thing, it's like another thing you gotta look at is I know nowadays we have all these police stations that aren't manned 24/7.
Yeah,
Are the
yeah.
cops even there, or is it just a substation?
This was a precinct, so it
Was
was
it a
big,
precinct station?
and
I mean, and even our precincts out here, we don't have cops at them all the time. They're out perusing the roads.
yeah. Well,
So,
this murder happened in the middle of the day. I don't have the approximate time,
that's so terrible.
but I know it was daytime when this happened.
And she
So,
screamed.
well, that's the thing. If she screamed, I mean, the element of surprise, she was stabbed in the heart. So I
Uh-huh.
don't know, if you're in shock from something like that,
That's a
uh,
good point. I mean,
I don't know.
it's
But I mean,
valid.
that's something we'd have to talk to like a coroner or somebody who has experience with that. But I mean, in terms of, you know, seeing something like that, but stabbed in the heart was like, I think I remember hearing my mother talk
Uh-huh.
about it. And it really haunted my family. And I'm wondering, and I hope, from our, from this broadcast to God's ears or anybody else's ears, if they remember or have a relative that remembers something from that day, because they would have at least heard a struggle or a fight of some sort, and it probably would have been a violent one because that the apartment was torn upside down.
And it's an apartment building.
It was so
You hear neighbors all day long. Of course, if it's the middle of the day, who's to say people weren't at work?
Yeah, I wonder if that's why they chose it.
Mhm. And
Yeah,
everybody's gotta work, to pay their bills, so this is a rough one.
this
I'm
was a
so
rough.
sorry.
But and I remember calling my aunts, telling my aunt because I had to call her, and I was like, Jen, let's do my aunt's case, and I go,
Yeah.
find the year. Let me call my Tia Lupi, and I said, Tia Lupi, what year did Tia Gracie die? And she said 1980, because I thought it was 80, but I wasn't sure.
Right.
And I said, okay, I'm going to find out what happened to her. I'm going to find out who killed her.
And
And they were
it's
like, okay.
so weird. There's not a damn thing online that I am finding for her.
So the reason being is not only is it an old case, but historically, people of color, as I told you,
Mhm.
especially in South Central LA, my aunt wasn't a famous movie star. Obviously, I mean, we
Right.
heard it
And
happened
this was
to
the 80s.
poor Nicole Brown Simpson, but my aunt had something worse than that happen. But if you're not in the public eye, if you at the time were in a low income area and associated with a different element, you didn't get a whole lot of. There wasn't any. I don't think there was any news on that
Right.
at all.
Did they
I don't think.
ever have a suspect? Did they ever have a person of interest
Well, the boyfriend.
besides the
I
boyfriend?
can't even remember his name, but I don't think that there was. I don't remember. But I think the boyfriend was, definitely somebody that they looked at, but they had excluded him because of the time card, and people were saying, "Oh yeah, he was at work. He was at work."
Weak.
But
It's so weak. I mean, if you look at it in today's perspective, that is
yeah,
such a weak alibi because the time cards can be manufactured. You can
well,
have somebody else punch the clock, like you said, or even punch the clock and then walk back out because in the 80s, there were not cameras like there are now.
yeah, exactly. So I'm sure that grief and guilt, and then my
Hmm.
aunt definitely making sure he didn't get a moment of peace is what caused him to overdose. But before he did, he confessed to his family that he had her killed. But I believe what he confessed is that he had her set up. But I definitely believe he was there. I believe there were two. I
What a
believe he.
piece of crap. What a piece of crap. I'm
Then the other
telling you. I
two.
hope to God that
Right.
she haunted both of them. I hope to God
I know she
that
did.
she haunted both of them and scared the shit out of them. It's like, you know what? A high five, girl.
Yeah.
That's all I can say. But
Yeah.
we actually have reached our time. I
Yeah.
didn't think we were gonna, but
No.
this is awesome.
Yeah.
So we will definitely be catching up with you in the next week. I will be talking to you. We'll be talking to everybody else within the
Of
next week.
course.
And then we're going to still work on finding out information and we're going to really push the FOIA to get the information on the case from the police department. I don't care how many people I have to send FOIAs to. We'll figure it out. So to you and your family, we're going to do what we can do to get this figured out. And I don't care if he's already dead. I don't care if that piece of crap is already dead. I want to know. And
Yeah.
if anybody has anything,
Any
please
information.
email us. If you were there, if you heard, you saw anything, even something as simple as a license plate, a vehicle type, if they were walking, if they, please email us. And our email is unearthed Jennifer N, the letter N, Gina at gmail.com. So
Gmail.com.
it's a long one, but
Yeah.
unfortunately the shorter ones were all taken. So
And of
but
course,
definitely.
and I'm only one medium. This happened to be my aunt, but if there's anybody that has any clues, please feel free to leave us the information via email, or you can, put it in the chat. If you want us to reach out to you, we can. We're taking it's like I said, it's about finding what happened to people. I know why it happened. That was important for my family, but and we know that the main person is dead, and I believe the second one was murdered as well. But any information to help put it together would be
Yes.
wonderful.
This show's about closure. That's all we're
Yes.
trying to help and find. So, thank you guys so much. We will see
Thank
you
you.
next time. Thank you, Gina, for sharing your family's,
Yes.
heart-wrenching incident. We will definitely be back next week. Thank you so much for staying with us.
Good night.
Bye.
Bye.